The dust rose in thick clouds behind Cole McRae as he urged the stolen mare forward across the Kansas plains. The September sun beat down mercilessly, turning the landscape into a shimmering hell of brown earth and dried grass. He'd been riding hard for 3 days now, switching between the 4 horses he'd lifted from the Garrison Ranch, fine specimens that would fetch good money once he crossed into Missouri. Behind him, somewhere in that heat haze, Marshal Tom Brennan and his posse were closing in. Cole could feel it in his bones, the way a man learns to feel danger after 15 years of living outside the law. He'd started stealing horses when he was barely 14. Just another orphan boy trying to survive in a world that had no use for him. Now, at 29, he was one of the most wanted men in 3 territories. The black stallion beneath him stumbled slightly, foam flecking its mouth. Cole cursed under his breath. He'd pushed them too hard, but there'd been no choice. That damn federal marshal had been waiting at the border, like he'd known exactly where Cole would cross. Someone had talked. Someone always talked when there was a $1,000 bounty on a man's head. He spotted a creek ahead, a thin line of green cutting through the parched earth. The horses needed water, and he needed to think. As he dismounted, keeping his Winchester close, Cole scanned the horizon. Nothing yet, but they'd be coming. They always came. The horses drank greedily while Cole filled his canteen, his weathered hands steady despite the urgency. He was a tall man, lean from years of hard riding, with dark hair that hung past his collar and eyes the color of winter sky, cold and distant. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a knife fight in Dodge City. Women found him handsome in a dangerous way, though Cole had never stayed in one place long enough for it to matter. A shot cracked through the air, followed by another. Cole's head snapped up. They were closer than he'd thought. He could see the dust cloud now, maybe 2 miles back. 5 riders, maybe 6. He swung back into the saddle, but as the stallion reared, another shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Cole managed to stay mounted, gripping the reins with his good hand as blood soaked through his shirt. The pain was sharp, familiar. He'd been shot before, but never when he was running 3 stolen horses and low on ammunition. He abandoned the extra horses. They'd only slow him down now, and rode hard toward the east, toward the maze of canyons that might offer cover. But the stallion was spent, and Cole was losing blood fast. The world began to blur at the edges, the rhythm of hoofbeats becoming a dull thunder in his ears. He didn't remember falling, didn't remember the stallion finally giving out. When darkness took him, his last thought was that at least he'd die free, under the open sky, not at the end of a rope. He woke to the sound of a woman humming. Cole's hand went instinctively for his gun, but found only empty air. Panic shot through him until he realized he was lying on clean straw in what looked like a barn. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the wooden walls, and the air smelled of hay and horses. His shoulder throbbed, but someone had bandaged it properly. The humming stopped. Cole turned his head slowly and found himself looking at a woman standing in the doorway, a bucket of water in her hands. She was younger than her manner suggested, maybe 25, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a plain gray dress that had seen better days, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made the worn fabric seem almost elegant. "You're awake," she said simply, setting the bucket down. Her voice was soft, educated. "I wasn't sure you would be." Cole tried to sit up, winced, and thought better of it. "Where am I?" "My barn." "About 3 miles outside Willow Creek." She moved closer, but kept a careful distance, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "I found you yesterday morning. Your horse had wandered onto my property." "The law?" "Hasn't come through here yet." She studied him with intelligent green eyes. "Though I suspect they will." Clara Jameson had lived alone on the small homestead for 2 years now, ever since James had died. The townspeople called it a riding accident, and she let them. It was easier than explaining how her husband had beaten her one too many times, how he'd been drunk that night when he'd tried to strike her again, how he'd lost his balance and fallen down the stairs, How she'd stood there watching him die, feeling nothing but relief. She'd seen the stranger's horse first, a magnificent black stallion that was clearly worth more than her entire farm. Then she'd found the man, unconscious and bleeding. Everything about him screamed danger. The well-oiled guns, the quality of his boots, the hard planes of his face even in unconsciousness. She should have ridden to town for the sheriff. Instead, she'd dragged him to her barn, tended his wound, and hidden his weapons. Why? Cole asked, as if reading her thoughts. Clara considered the question. I'm not sure, she said honestly. Maybe because you looked like you needed help. Maybe because I'm tired of doing what I'm supposed to do. She'd been the perfect wife, the respectable widow, the dedicated school teacher. The town matrons approved of her, even as they pitied her childless state. If they knew she had an outlaw bleeding in her barn, they'd run her out of town on a rail. I need to go, Cole said, attempting to rise again. You need to heal. Clara's tone was firm. That bullet went clean through, but you've lost a lot of blood. Try to ride now and you'll be dead in an hour. Their eyes met and held. Cole wasn't used to kindness, especially from women who looked at him with such steady assessment. Most people looked away from him, sensing the violence that clung to him like smoke. But this woman met his gaze straight on, unafraid. What's your name? She asked. He hesitated. Cole. Just Cole. Just Cole is safer for both of us. Clara nodded. I'm Clara Jameson. I teach at the school in town. She picked up the bucket. I'll bring you some food. Try to rest. After she left, Cole lay back against the straw, his mind racing. He needed to move on, but his body wouldn't cooperate. The shoulder wound was bad, worse than he'd let on. And this woman, this strange, calm woman who'd saved him for reasons she couldn't explain, was now in danger because of him. Through the barn window, he could see her walking back to the modest farmhouse, her back straight despite the weight of the water bucket. The late afternoon sun caught her hair, turning it to flame. For the first time in years, Cole McRae found himself thinking about something other than the next job, the next town, the next escape. He closed his eyes, listening to the ordinary sounds of her farm, chickens clucking, a cow lowing in the distance. It was a foreign world to him, this quiet domesticity. He'd grown up in saloons and stables, raised by men who lived by the gun and died by the rope. The closest he'd come to a real home was the various hideouts he'd used over the years, and even those were just temporary shelters between jobs. When Clara returned with a plate of stew and cornbread, the sun was setting. She'd brought a lantern, which she hung on a nail, casting golden light across the barn's interior. Can you sit up? She asked. Cole managed it with effort, leaning back against a post. Clara handed him the plate, then surprised him by settling onto a milking stool nearby. Most people couldn't get away from him fast enough. You're not afraid, he observed between bites. The food was simple but good, better than anything he'd eaten in weeks. Should I be? Most folks with sense would be. Clara smiled slightly. Maybe I don't have much sense. She smoothed her skirts. Or maybe I recognize someone else who's running from something. Cole's hand stilled. I'm not running from anything, just heading somewhere else. Aren't they the same thing? He didn't answer, focusing on the food. But he found himself studying her when he thought she wasn't looking. There was a sadness in her eyes that seemed at odds with her relatively young age, a wariness in the way she held herself. She'd known pain, this woman. He recognized it like calling to your husband, he said finally. He around? Dead. 2 years now. Sorry, I'm not. The words came out sharp, unexpected. Clara flushed. I shouldn't have said that. Says who? She looked at him then, really looked at him. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone harder, I suppose. Cole almost laughed. Lady, I'm about as hard as they come. Perhaps. She stood, brushing straw from her skirt. "I'll check on you in the morning. Try not to die in my barn. It would be difficult to explain." After she left, Cole stared at the closed barn door for a long time. He'd planned to slip away during the night, wounded or not, but something held him there, some inexplicable pull he didn't understand. Maybe it was the way she'd said she wasn't sorry her husband was dead, like she was testing him. Maybe it was the way the lamplight had caught in her hair. Or maybe he was just tired, bone deep, soul tired of running, of sleeping with one eye open, of never trusting another living soul. For one night, in this stranger's barn, he could pretend he was just a man recovering from a wound, not a wanted criminal with a price on his head. Outside, a coyote howled in the distance. Cole checked the Colt .45 Clara had left within reach, unloaded, but she didn't need to know he had bullets in his boot. Old habits died hard, and trust didn't come easy to men like him. But as sleep took him, Cole found himself thinking about green eyes and steady hands, about a woman who'd chosen to save him when walking away would have been safer. Tomorrow he'd leave. Tomorrow he'd go back to being the man the law wanted to hang. Tonight, though, he'd rest in Clara Jameson's barn, surrounded by the foreign comfort of hay and horses and the lingering scent of lavender from her dress. It was more peace than he'd known in 15 years. And if it was all he'd ever have, maybe that was enough. The last thing he heard before sleep claimed him was the distant sound of her humming again, carried on the night wind from the farmhouse. It was a hymn he remembered from childhood, from before everything went wrong. Amazing Grace, sung by a woman who'd shown him exactly that. The first week passed in a blur of fever dreams and pain. Cole drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of cool hands on his burning forehead and the soft voice that spoke to him through the darkness. Clara had moved him to the old tack room at the back of the barn, where curious eyes from the road couldn't spot him. She'd made a pallet of clean blankets on the floor, turning the dusty space into something almost comfortable. By the 8th day, the fever broke. Cole woke to find Clara changing his bandages, her movements careful and practiced. The morning light streaming through the small window caught the worry lines around her eyes. "You've been talking in your sleep," she said without looking up. Cole tensed. "What did I say?" "Names, mostly. Places. Fort Worth, Abilene." She secured the fresh bandage. "And Rebecca." The name hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't spoken it aloud in 5 years. "She's dead." Clara's hands stilled. "I'm sorry. Don't be." It was a long time ago, but the memories came anyway, unwanted and sharp. Rebecca laughing in the moonlight. Rebecca shot down in the street because she'd loved the wrong man. He'd killed 3 men that night in revenge, starting his transformation from small-time thief to wanted murderer. "Is that why you do it?" Clara asked quietly. "Steal horses, live outside the law?" "No." Cole's voice was rough. "I do it because it's all I know." She finished with the bandage and sat back on her heels. "I don't believe that. Lady, you don't know the first thing about me. I know you could have overpowered me days ago, taken my horses, my money, whatever food I had, but you haven't." Cole met her gaze. "Maybe I'm just biding my time." "Maybe." But she smiled as she said it, and Cole found himself fighting not to smile back. The routine they developed was born of necessity but grew into something else. Clara would come before dawn and after dusk, bringing food, water, and medical supplies. She'd check his wound, which was healing cleaner than he had any right to expect. Then she'd sit on an overturned crate and they'd talk, or rather, she'd talk and he'd listen. Cole learned about her childhood in Missouri, daughter of a minister who'd believed in education for women, how she'd come west as a bride at 19, full of dreams about building a life on the frontier, how those dreams had died slowly, bruise by bruise, until the night James Jameson had died and set her free. "He was handsome," she said one evening, mending one of Cole's shirts by lamplight. "Charming when he wanted to be. Everyone said I was lucky to catch him." "Were you?" Cole was propped against the wall. close enough to see the way her fingers moved with the needle. At first, he was gentle then, attentive. It wasn't until after the wedding that I learned about his temper and his drinking. She made another careful stitch. The first time he hit me, I was so shocked I couldn't even cry. My father had never raised a hand to anyone. Why didn't you leave? Clara looked up at him. Where would I have gone? A married woman has no rights, no property. Everything I brought to the marriage became his. And the shame. She shook her head. The shame of admitting I'd failed. Cole understood shame. It was a constant companion, along with guilt and anger. It wasn't your failure. No, but it took me 6 years to understand that. She held up the mended shirt. There, good as new. Nothing's ever good as new, Cole said, taking it from her. Their fingers brushed, and he saw her quick intake of breath. The attraction between them had been building for days, unspoken but undeniable. It was in the way she lingered after tending his wound, the way he watched her move around the small space. But both of them knew the danger of acting on it. He was leaving as soon as he could ride. She had a reputation to protect. Still, when Clara stood to go, Cole caught her wrist gently. Why are you doing this? Really? She looked down at his hand on her arm, but didn't pull away. Because for the first time in my life, I'm making a choice that's entirely mine, not my father's, not my husband's, not the town's, mine. I'm a bad choice, Clara. I know. She did pull away then, but her eyes were soft. That's what makes it mine. The nights were the hardest. Cole would lie awake, listening to the settling barn and the distant coyotes, thinking about things he had no business thinking, about what it would be like to be a different man, one who could court a woman properly, offer her something more than a life of running. Sometimes he'd see her silhouette passing by the window of the farmhouse, and he'd wonder what she was doing. Reading by lamplight? Preparing lessons for her students? Or was she lying awake too, thinking dangerous thoughts? One night, the nightmares were particularly bad. Cole woke gasping, the tack room spinning around him. His shirt was soaked with sweat, and his hands shook as he reached for his gun. The door creaked open. Clara stood there in her nightgown and shawl, a lantern in her hand. I heard you cry out from the house. You shouldn't be here, not dressed like that. But she came in anyway, setting the lantern on the crate. The dreams, are they always this bad? Cole ran a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. Sometimes worse. Tell me. You don't want to hear it. I've told you my darkness. Perhaps it's time you shared yours. So he did, in the circle of lamplight, with Clara sitting close enough that he could smell the soap she used. Cole talked about the orphanage in St. Louis, where he'd learned that kindness was weakness. About Big Tom Mallory, who'd taken him in at 14, teaching him to steal horses and live by the gun. About the men he'd killed, some in self-defense, some for money, some for reasons he could barely remember. There's a darkness in me, he said finally. Been there so long I don't remember what it's like without it. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched the scar on his face. This darkness, does it hurt? Not anymore. Just feels empty. I understand empty. Her fingers traced the scar's path. After James died, I thought I'd feel free. Instead, I felt nothing, like I'd used up all my feelings just surviving. Cole caught her hand, pressed it flat against his cheek. You feel something now? Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Do you? Instead of answering, he pulled her closer. She came willingly, her free hand resting on his chest. They stayed like that, forehead to forehead, sharing breath in the small space. This is madness, Clara whispered. I know. You'll leave. You'll ride out of here and I'll never see you again. I know. But neither of them moved away. Cole's hand slid into her hair, loosening the pins until it fell around her shoulders like copper silk. Clara's eyes fluttered closed. I've never been kissed gentle, she said. Not once. James was always rough, demanding, taking what he thought was his. Clara, could you, just once, so I know what it's like? Cole's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could feel it. He'd kissed plenty of women, saloon girls mostly, transactions as much as anything else. But this was different. This mattered. He touched his lips to hers, soft as morning mist. Clara sighed against his mouth, her hand tightening in his shirt. The kiss was chaste by any standard, but Cole felt it like lightning through his veins. When they parted, Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For showing me it could be different." She left quickly after that, taking the lantern with her. Cole sat in the darkness, touching his lips like some green boy after his first kiss. He was in trouble. Deep trouble. And not from the law this time. The next morning, Clara was all business. She brought breakfast and fresh bandages, checking his wound with clinical detachment. But Cole noticed the flush on her cheeks, the way she avoided his eyes. "I owe you an apology," she said as she worked. "Last night was inappropriate." "Was it? You're recovering, vulnerable. I took advantage." "Clara," he caught her hands, stilling them. "I've been taking care of myself since I was 7 years old. Nobody takes advantage of me." She looked at him then, and the longing in her eyes nearly undid him. "This can't happen. I know. You're leaving. Soon as I can ride. Then we forget last night happened. If that's what you want." But her hands were still in his, and neither of them seemed able to let go. The morning sun slanted through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing between them. Somewhere outside, a meadowlark sang. "I used to dream about running away," Clara said suddenly. "When things were bad with James, I'd imagine getting on a horse and riding until I found somewhere no one knew me. It's not the life you think it is." "I know, but sometimes—" She pulled her hands free, resumed her work. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be truly free." Cole wanted to tell her that freedom was just another word for loneliness, that the open road got mighty cold at night, and there was no comfort in constantly looking over your shoulder. But he kept quiet, because another part of him, a part he'd thought long dead, was imagining what it would be like to have her beside him. "My shoulder's almost healed," he said instead. "Few more days and I'll be gone." "Good." But her voice caught on the word. That afternoon, while Clara was at school, Cole ventured out of the tack room for the first time. His legs were shaky, but held. He made his way to where Clara had hidden Black Jack, finding the stallion well fed and groomed. The horse nickered softly, pushing his nose into Cole's chest. "Yeah, I missed you too, boy." He ran his hands over the animal's flanks, checking for any signs of injury. "We'll be riding soon, just a few more days." But as he stood there in Clara's barn, surrounded by the evidence of her care, the fresh straw, the full water bucket, the oats she must have bought with her meager teacher's salary, Cole felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time anyone had shown him kindness without expecting something in return? That night, Clara brought supper and stayed to eat with him. They talked about inconsequential things, her students, the coming harvest, a barn dance the town was planning. Normal things that Cole had never been part of. He found himself memorizing the way she laughed, the gesture she made when pushing her hair back, the little furrow between her brows when she was thinking. "Read to me," he said impulsively, gesturing to the book she'd brought. "You want me to read to you?" "Never had anyone do that, not since I was real small." Clara opened the book, poetry. He saw. "This is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She wrote about love in a way that, well, listen." Her voice was soft in the lamplight as she read about "How do I love thee?" and counting the ways. Cole closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. He'd never understood poetry before, thought it was foolishness for people with too much time on their hands. But hearing it in Clara's voice, he began to understand how words could be both beautiful and dangerous. When she finished, the silence stretched between them, full of everything they couldn't say. "I should go," Clara said finally. "Stay. Just a little longer." She shook her head but didn't move. "This is torture, you know, having you here but knowing you'll leave. You could come with me." The words hung in the air between them. Cole hadn't meant to say them, but now they were out there. Impossible to take back. "You don't mean that," Clara said. "Maybe I do. The life you lead, I couldn't—" "I know." He leaned back against the wall, suddenly tired. "Forget I said it." But the seed had been planted, and over the next days it grew despite their best efforts to ignore it. They were careful not to touch, careful to keep their conversations light, but the awareness between them was a living thing, electric and undeniable. Cole grew stronger, taking longer walks around the barn, working with Black Jack to keep them both limber. His shoulder barely pained him now, just a dull ache when it rained. He had no excuse to stay longer. The thunder of hooves on the main road made Cole's blood run cold. He'd been exercising Black Jack in the paddock behind the barn when he heard them. Multiple riders, moving fast. In one smooth motion, he led the stallion back inside, his hand already on his colt. Clara appeared in the barn doorway, her face pale beneath her bonnet. She'd just returned from town, and her expression told him everything. "Federal marshals," she said breathlessly. "3 of them. They're questioning everyone about a wounded man, checking all the farms." Cole was already saddling Black Jack, his movements quick and efficient despite the protest from his shoulder. "How long?" "They were at the miller's place when I passed. That's 2 farms over." Clara's hands twisted in her apron. "Cole, you have to go, now!" But even as she said it, they both heard the approaching horses turning up her lane. Cole cursed, leading Black Jack deeper into the barn. There was no back exit, no time to run without being seen. "The root cellar," Clara said suddenly. "Under the house. Go!" "They'll search there." "Not if I give them reason to look elsewhere." She was already pulling off her bonnet, messing her usually neat hair. "Trust me." Cole wanted to argue, but the horses were getting closer. He pressed Black Jack's reins into her hands. "If something happens, go!" He ran for the house, slipping through the back door just as the riders entered the front yard. The root cellar door was in the kitchen floor, barely visible beneath a worn rug. Cole lowered himself into the darkness, pulling the door closed above him. In the cramped space, surrounded by preserves and potatoes, he waited. His guns were ready, but he found himself praying he wouldn't need them. Not here, not in Clara's home. He could hear boots on the porch, heavy knocks on the door. Then Clara's voice, higher than usual, playing a part. "Marshals? Oh my goodness! Is something wrong?" "Ma'am." A deep voice, professionally courteous. "I'm Marshal Frank Morrison. We're looking for a wanted man who might have passed through here. Cole McRae, horse thief and killer." "A killer?" Clara's gasp sounded genuine. "Here, in Willow Creek?" "He was wounded in a shootout about 2 weeks back. We tracked him this far before losing the trail. Been checking all the farms, seeing if anyone's noticed anything unusual. I live alone. Marshal, I certainly would have noticed a stranger." A pause. "Would you like some coffee? You must be tired from riding." Cole could picture her, playing the perfect hostess, the respectable widow. He'd seen her practice this role in town, knew how good she was at it. "That's kind of you, ma'am, but we need to search the property." "Search?" Now there was a hint of indignation. "Marshal Morrison, I am a schoolteacher and a Christian woman. What could you possibly expect to find here?" "Just procedure, ma'am. You mentioned you live alone." "Since my husband passed, yes, though." Clara's voice dropped, as if sharing a confidence. "I did have a bit of trouble a few days ago." "What kind of trouble?" "Someone had been in my barn, disturbed the hay, left the door unlatched. I assumed it was drifters, but now—" Another dramatic pause. "You don't think it could have been this outlaw?" "It's possible. Mind if we take a look?" "Of course not. Though I hope you won't judge me for the mess. I've been storing old furniture out there since James died. Keep meaning to sell it, but—" Her voice caught with perfectly timed emotion. The footsteps moved away from the house. Cole remained frozen, barely breathing. Clara was risking everything for him, and the weight of it sat heavy on his chest. Time crawled. He could hear distant voices from the barn, the occasional whinny from the horses. Then, after what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, the footsteps returned. "Find anything?" Clara asked. "Someone's definitely been bedding down in your barn, ma'am. Recent, too." "Oh dear, should I be worried? I mean, if he comes back..." "We'll post a man in town for a few days. Keep an eye out. But men like McRae don't usually return to the same place twice." Morrison's voice was reassuring. "You might want to get better locks. Though, maybe ask one of your neighbors to check on you regular." "That's very kind. Marshal, I'll certainly be more careful." More pleasantries, more reassurances. Then finally, blessed silence. Cole counted to 500 before carefully lifting the cellar door. Clara sat at her kitchen table, hands folded, still as a statue. When she saw him, her composure cracked. "They're gone, posted at the road to town, but gone. You took a hell of a risk." "What was I supposed to do? Let them find you?" She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "They'll be watching now. You can't stay in the barn. I can't stay at all." Cole joined her at the window, careful to keep back from the glass. "I've put you in enough danger. You're not healed enough to ride hard." "I'll manage." Clara whirled on him. "Stop it. Stop acting like your life doesn't matter." "It doesn't. Not compared to yours." "That's not your decision to make." Her eyes blazed. "I chose to help you. I choose to keep helping you." When did my choices stop mattering? The afternoon sun slanted across her face, highlighting the determined set of her jaw. Cole had faced down gunmen and posse leaders, but this slip of a woman with her schoolteacher's propriety and hidden steel undid him completely. "Your choices matter," he said quietly. "That's why I have to go. Not yet, not with them watching the roads." She took a breath, seeming to come to a decision. "You'll stay here, in the house, just until they stop watching. Clara, the spare room. You'll be comfortable there. And if anyone comes calling, you can hide in the cellar again." Her tone brooked no argument. "It's decided." And somehow, it was. That evening, after full dark, Cole found himself in a real bed for the first time in years. The spare room was small but clean, with a quilt that smelled of lavender and a window overlooking the moonlit fields. Clara brought him supper, then lingered in the doorway. She'd changed into a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. "Thank you," Cole said, "for everything. You'd do the same for me." Would I? He genuinely didn't know. Before meeting her, he'd have said no. Now, "I believe you would." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "May I ask you something?" "Shoot." "What you said the other day about taking me with you." She moved closer, until she stood beside the bed. "Did you mean it?" Cole's heart hammered. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." He sat up, catching her hand. "Every word, but that doesn't make it possible." "Why not?" "You know why. The running, the danger, the kind of man I am. The kind of man who's gentle when he doesn't have to be, who talks to me like I have thoughts worth hearing, who looks at me like..." She stopped, color flooding her cheeks. "Like what? Like I'm something precious." Cole tugged her hand, drawing her down to sit beside him. "You are precious. That's why you deserve better than what I can offer." "What if I don't want better? What if I want you?" The words hung between them, dangerous as loaded guns. Cole knew he should push her away, make her see sense. Instead, he cupped her face in his hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "Clara, beautiful, brave Clara, you're killing me. Then we'll die together." She turned her face into his palm, pressing her lips to the calluses there. "I've been dead for years. Cole, you make me feel alive." He kissed her then. Not gentle this time, but desperate, like a drowning man seeking air. Clara responded with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Stay with me," she whispered. Just for tonight. No expectations. No promises. Just stay. Cole knew he should say no. Knew that every moment he spent in her arms would make leaving harder. But faced with the plea in her eyes, his resistance crumbled. Just for tonight, he agreed. She smiled, sad and radiant at once, and kissed him again. Later, they lay entwined in the narrow bed, Clara's head on his chest, her hair spread across him like silk. Cole stared at the ceiling, one hand stroking her bare shoulder, wondering how he'd let this happen. "Tell me about the places you've been." Clara murmured against his skin. So he did. He painted word pictures of the Colorado mountains, purple in twilight, the endless grass sea of the Kansas prairie, desert sunsets that set the world on fire. Places he'd seen while running, but described now through her wondering eyes. "It sounds beautiful," she said. "It is, but it's lonely too. Not if you have someone with you." Cole's hand stilled. "Clara, I know. No promises." She lifted her head to look at him. "But let me pretend. Just for tonight." He pulled her up for another kiss, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When dawn came, reality would intrude again. But for now, in this quiet room with this remarkable woman in his arms, Cole McRae let himself believe in possibilities. They made love again as the moon set, slow and tender, memorizing each other with hands and lips. Clara whispered his name like a prayer, and Cole thought his heart might break from the sweetness of it. Afterward, she traced the scars on his chest, each one a story of violence and survival. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "The life you've led?" "Not as much as leaving you will." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I have money saved. Not much, but enough to start somewhere new." "Clara, don't!" "Why not? Why is it so impossible?" She sat up, the sheet clutched to her chest, eyes fierce. "People start over all the time out here. New names, new lives. The past has a way of catching up. Then we'll face it together." Cole sat up too, capturing her shoulders. "Listen to me. I've killed men. Not just in self-defense, but because I was paid to. I've stolen from people who worked hard for what they had. I've done things that would make you look at me different if you knew. I know enough." "No, you don't." He released her, running his hands through his hair. "You see some romantic figure, some man worth saving, but there's nothing romantic about sleeping in the dirt, about always looking over your shoulder, about knowing that any day could be your last. As opposed to my life now." Clara's voice was bitter. "Teaching other people's children because I'll never have my own? Pretending to mourn a man who broke my ribs? Dying slowly of respectability. At least you're safe." "I don't want to be safe." The words burst from her like they'd been building for years. "I want to live, Cole. Really live, not just exist." He looked at her in the pre-dawn darkness, this proper school teacher with her wild hair and wilder heart. She meant it. He realized she'd actually give up everything to ride with him. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then show me." She moved closer, taking his face in her hands. "Give me one day. Tomorrow, let me see what your life is really like. Then I'll decide. And if there's trouble, if the marshals, then we'll face it, together or not at all." Cole knew he should refuse, but looking into her eyes, seeing the determination there, he found himself nodding. "One day." She smiled, brilliant as sunrise, and sealed the bargain with a kiss. Outside, a rooster crowed, heralding the dawn. Soon Clara would have to return to her room, maintain the fiction of propriety, but for a few more minutes, they held each other. Two damaged souls finding solace in the darkness. "Whatever happens," Clara whispered, "I want you to know that you, have given me something I thought I'd never have again." "What's that?" "Hope." Cole closed his eyes, holding her tighter. He wanted to tell her that she'd given him the same thing, but the word stuck in his throat. Hope was dangerous for men like him. Hope got you killed, but as the first light crept through the window, painting Clara's skin gold, Cole McRae let himself hope anyway, just for one more day. The morning brought trouble in the form of misses. Margaret Hutchins, the mayor's wife and self-appointed guardian of Willow Creek's moral standards. Clara had barely finished dressing when the woman's buggy rolled up the lane. "Hide," Clara hissed, rushing past the spare room. She has eyes like a hawk and a tongue twice as sharp. Cole was already moving, gathering his few possessions. The cellar again. Though this time he took a lit candle. As the trapdoor closed above him, he heard Mrs. Hutchins' imperious knock. "Clara, dear, I've come to check on you after yesterday's frightful news." From below, Cole listened to Clara's performance, gracious, slightly flustered, perfectly proper. But Mrs. Hutchins hadn't ruled Willow Creek's social scene for 20 years without developing instincts. "You look tired, dear, not sleeping well. The marshal's visit was unsettling. To think a dangerous criminal might have been in my very barn. Yes, about that." A pause, heavy with implication. "Samuel Parker mentioned seeing lamplight in your windows quite late last night. And early this morning. I couldn't sleep. I was reading." "Of course. Still. A young widow. Alone. People do talk." Cole's jaw clenched. Even hidden in the cellar, he could feel the threat in the woman's words. Clara's reputation was everything in a town like this. Without it, she'd lose her position, her home, everything. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Hutchins, truly. But I assure you, I'm sure you do, dear. That's why I've taken the liberty of arranging something." The satisfaction in the woman's voice made Cole's skin crawl. "My nephew, Robert, is visiting from St. Joseph, a lawyer, quite successful. I thought perhaps you might join us for dinner Sunday after church." The trap was neat as a snare. Refuse, and Clara would seem suspicious. Accept, and she'd be thrust into a courtship she didn't want. That's very kind. "Wonderful. Robert's 32, never married. Been waiting for the right woman? Someone respectable, capable of maintaining a proper household." The conversation continued. Each word another bar in the cage misses. Hutchins was building around Clara. When the woman finally left, Cole emerged to find Clara slumped at the kitchen table. "I'm sorry," she said without looking up. "I couldn't refuse without causing more suspicion." "It's not your fault." Cole moved behind her, hands settling on her shoulders. "This is what I meant. My presence here is already destroying your life. My life was destroyed long before you arrived." She leaned back into his touch. "You just made me realize it." They spent the morning in careful normalcy. Clara baked bread while Cole repaired a broken chair. Domestic tasks that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. But underneath ran a current of tension, time slipping away like water through cupped hands. After lunch, Clara surprised him. "Come on, you promised me one day." She led him to the barn where Blackjack waited, already saddled. Her own mare, a gentle bay named Buttercup, stood ready beside him. "The marshals are watching the road to town. We're going the other way." She swung into the saddle with practiced ease. "There's something I want to show you." They rode out across her back pasture, through a grove of cottonwoods, and into open country. Clara set a brisk pace, her riding skirts billowing, hair escaping from its pins. This wasn't the proper schoolteacher or the frightened widow. This was someone else entirely. Someone free. After an hour, they reached a hidden valley, sheltered by red rock walls and fed by a small spring. Ancient petroglyphs decorated the stones, and the grass grew thick and green. "James never knew about this place," Clara said, dismounting. "I found it after he died, when I was learning to be alone." Cole swung down beside her, taking in the peaceful scene. "It's beautiful. I used to come here and pretend I was someone else, a woman who could just disappear into the wilderness if she chose." She smiled ruefully. "Childish. I know. Not childish. Human." They spread a blanket by the spring, sharing the simple meal Clara had packed, for a while. They could pretend they were just two people enjoying an afternoon ride. No past, no future. Just the present moment under the wide Kansas sky. "Tell me," Clara said, lying back on the blanket. If you could go anywhere, be anyone, what would you choose? Cole stretched out beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. Never thought about it. Think now. He was quiet for a long moment, watching clouds drift overhead. Maybe I'd have a small spread somewhere. Nothing fancy, just a few horses. Maybe some cattle. Place where a man could watch the sunrise without wondering if it'd be his last. That sounds nice. What else? A garden. Maybe. Never had one, but I like the idea of growing things instead of destroying them. Clara rolled onto her side, studying his face. And would there be anyone else at this spread? Might be, if she was fool enough to have me. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, tasting of hope and impossibility. When they parted, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'd be that fool, she whispered. They stayed until the sun began its descent, talking about everything and nothing. Clara told him about her students, the bright ones and the struggling ones, how she loved watching understanding dawn in their eyes. Cole found himself telling her about horses he'd known, their personalities and quirks, how he'd always hated selling them even though it was necessary. You love them, Clara observed. The horses, they're honest. A horse never pretends to be something it's not. Unlike people, especially unlike people. As they rode back, the sky painted itself in shades of rose and gold. Cole found himself memorizing every detail, the way Clara sat her horse, the music of her laugh, the fierce joy in her eyes. Whatever happened tomorrow, he'd have this. They were almost home when they saw the smoke. Black plumes rose from the direction of town, and the wind carried the acrid smell of burning wood. Clara's face went white. The school! They kicked their horses into a gallop, racing toward town. As they crested the final hill, the scene below made Clara cry out. The schoolhouse was engulfed in flames. Townspeople formed bucket brigades. But it was clearly too late. The building was lost. My books, Clara whispered. The children's primers, the maps. Cole scanned the crowd, instinct screaming danger. There, Marshal Morrison, his face grim as he directed the firefighting efforts. And there, talking to him, Mrs. Hutchins, her finger pointing toward the road where Cole and Clara had just appeared. We need to go, Cole said urgently. Now. But Clara was already riding toward the fire, drawn by duty and despair. Cole cursed and followed, knowing it was a mistake but unable to let her face it alone. They dismounted at the edge of the crowd. Several townspeople noticed them, whispering behind raised hands. Clara pushed through to where the school committee stood watching their investment burn. What happened? She demanded. Mayor Hutchins turned, his face grave. Arson. We think someone broke in, spread kerosene. Who would do such a thing? That's what we're trying to determine. Morrison appeared at the mayor's elbow, eyes sharp as he studied Cole. Ma'am, sir, mind telling me where you've been? Riding, Clara said. I needed to get away after yesterday. Together, Mrs. Hutchins' voice dripped disapproval. Clara, who is this man? The crowd was growing, pressing closer. Cole felt the tension ratcheting up, saw recognition dawning in Morrison's eyes. His hand drifted toward his gun. He's... Clara faltered. Cole McRae, Morrison said quietly. Isn't that right? The crowd reacted like they'd been slapped. Women gasped. Men reached for weapons they didn't have. Someone grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her away from Cole. No! She struggled against the hands holding her. You don't understand. I understand plenty, Morrison said, his own gun now drawn. McRae, you're under arrest. Cole calculated odds, distances, angles of fire. He could probably take Morrison, maybe one or two others, but not without bloodshed, not without destroying whatever life Clara might salvage from this. Did he force you, dear? Mrs. Hutchins was asking Clara. Did this animal? He didn't force anything. Clara's voice rang out clear and strong. I helped him. I hid him. Of my own free will. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the crowd exploded in shocked voices. Accusations. Demands for justice. Through it all, Clara stood straight-backed, chin high, meeting their judgment without flinching. "Well," Morrison said, "that changes things. Ma'am, you're under arrest too, for aiding a known fugitive." "No." Cole stepped forward. "She didn't know who I was. I lied to her, used her. Stop!" Clara's eyes met his, fierce with purpose. "No more lies. Not for me." Morrison looked between them, understanding dawning. "I see. Well, this is unfortunate. Mrs. Jameson has been a respected member of this community." "Not anymore," someone muttered. "Shameful," another voice added. "Her poor husband barely cold." Cole saw Clara flinch at that, and something savage rose in him. "Her husband was a drunk who beat her. You all knew it and did nothing. Don't you dare judge her now?" More gasps, more outrage, but a few faces showed shame, acknowledgement of the truth they'd all ignored. "Enough," Morrison said. "McRae, you come quiet. This doesn't have to get ugly." Cole looked at Clara, surrounded by people she'd served faithfully, now treating her like a pariah. Looked at the burning school, wondering if it was coincidence or if someone had wanted to force them into the open. Looked at Morrison, a decent man just doing his job. "Let her go," Cole said quietly. "I'll come willing if you let her go." "Can't do that. She confessed to harboring a fugitive." "Then I'm not coming willing." The crowd backed away as Cole's stance shifted. Predator subtle. Morrison's jaw tightened, but his gun stayed steady. "Don't be a fool. McRae, you're outnumbered 20-1. Numbers don't matter if you're willing to die." "Cole, no!" Clara broke free from the people holding her, moving toward him. "Please, get back," he said harshly. "No." She reached him, laid her hand on his gun arm. "This isn't how our story ends. How does it end then?" "I don't know, but not with blood, not with you dying for my poor choices." "They weren't poor choices." "No," she agreed softly. "They were the best choices I ever made." Morrison cleared his throat. "Touching as this is, I've got a job to do." Cole felt Clara's hand squeeze his arm, saw the acceptance in her eyes, mixed with a love so fierce it took his breath. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hands. "All right, Marshal, you win." The arrest was swift, professional. As the irons closed around Cole's wrists, he kept his eyes on Clara. She stood alone now, the crowd having moved away from her like she carried plague. "I'll get you a lawyer," she said. "Don't. Save your money. Start fresh somewhere." "I'll wait. Don't do that either." But her eyes said she would, and Cole knew arguing was useless. As Morrison led him away, Cole took one last look at her, hair wild from their ride, chin defiant despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. Still the bravest thing he'd ever seen. "For what it's worth," Morrison said quietly. "I'm sorry it had to end this way." Cole didn't answer. He was thinking about a hidden valley, about promises made under an endless sky, about the taste of hope on Clara's lips. He'd had one perfect day. For a man like him, maybe that was more than he deserved. Behind them, the school collapsed in a shower of sparks, and Clara Jameson stood in the ruins of her reputation, watching the only man she'd ever truly loved disappear into the darkness. The trial was swift and merciless. Cole stood in the courthouse at Fort Smith, watching dust motes dance in the morning light as the judge pronounced his sentence. 10 years hard labor, though everyone knew it might as well be death. Men didn't usually survive that long breaking rocks under the territorial sun. Clara had been there every day, sitting in the back row despite the whispers and turned backs. They'd dropped the charges against her. Insufficient evidence. Morrison had argued, taking pity on a woman he'd known since she was a bride, but Willow Creek had already passed its own judgment. The school board had dismissed her immediately. Mrs. Hutchins had made sure everyone knew the sordid details, real and imagined. As they led Cole away, he caught one last glimpse of Clara's face. She pressed her fingers to her lips, then to her heart. He carried that image with him into the prison wagon, into the darkness that waited. But Cole McRae hadn't survived 15 years as an outlaw by accepting fate. 3 weeks into his journey to the territorial prison, during a river crossing, he made his move. The current was strong. The guards distracted. In the confusion of a wagon wheel catching on rocks, Cole slipped his chains and dove. The water was ice cold, shocking his lungs empty. He heard shouting, gunshots, but the river had him now. He let it carry him downstream, fighting to keep his head above water with his hands still partially bound. When he finally dragged himself onto a muddy bank miles later, he was half dead but free. It took him 2 months to make his way to Colorado. 2 months of hiding, stealing, slowly working off the prison shackles with stolen tools. He thought about Clara constantly, wondered if she was safe, if she'd found somewhere to start over. He told himself staying away was the kindest thing he could do for her. He found work at a horse ranch in the mountains, using the name John Carson, the owner. A gruff German named Muller didn't ask questions about the scars on Cole's wrists or why a man with his obvious skill with horses was willing to work for room, board, and a few dollars a month. The work was hard but honest. Cole spent his days breaking wild Mustangs, mending fences, feeling the satisfaction of building something instead of tearing it down. At night, he'd sit on the bunkhouse porch, watching stars wheel overhead, and allow himself to remember. The other hands were good men, mostly. There was Red, a former Confederate soldier who never talked about the war. Mexican Pete, who could gentle a horse with just his voice. Young Tommy, barely 18, full of dreams about seeing the world. "You ever been married, Carson?" Tommy asked one night over whiskey. "No." "Ever been in love?" Cole was quiet so long, Tommy probably thought he wouldn't answer. "Once." "What happened?" "I wasn't good enough for her." "Maybe she didn't care about that." Red said quietly. He'd been married once. Cole knew. His wife had died while he was away fighting. Maybe she didn't. That's what made her a fool. But even as he said it, Cole knew it wasn't true. Clara had been many things: brave, stubborn, passionate, but never a fool. She'd known exactly what she was choosing and had chosen anyway. That kind of courage humbled him still. Winter came early to the mountains. Cole had been at the ranch 4 months when Muller broke his leg in a fall. The old man needed help getting to town for the doctor, then someone to handle his business while he recovered. He chose Cole. "You're steady," Muller said, gritting his teeth as they splinted the leg. "Reliable. Don't trust easy, but I trust you." Cole drove him to Leadville in the wagon, helped get him settled at the doctor's house, then took Muller's list of supplies and banking needs. It was at the general store, buying winter provisions, that Cole's carefully constructed new life shattered. She was standing at the counter, discussing prices with the clerk. Her hair was different, pinned up in a style he didn't recognize, and she wore a practical wool dress instead of her usual cotton. But Cole would have known her anywhere. "Clara?" She turned slowly, as if she'd been expecting him. "Hello, Cole." The clerk looked between them, sensing drama. Clara calmly finished her transaction, then walked out. Cole followed, his heart hammering. On the street, she finally faced him fully. She was thinner than he remembered, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but she was still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You escaped," she said. It wasn't a question. "How are you here?" "I told you I had money saved. After everything. There was nothing keeping me in Kansas." She pulled her shawl tighter against the mountain wind. "I remembered what you said about Colorado, about the mountains. So I came to see them for myself. Clara, I teach at the mining camp school. It's not much, but the children need education and they don't care about my past." She studied his face. "You look well. Healthier. I've been working horse ranch up the valley." "Under what name?" "John Carson. John Carson." She repeated softly. "Is he a better man than Cole McRae?" "He's trying to be." They stood there in the busy street, drinking each other in. Cole wanted to touch her so badly his hands ached, but he kept them at his sides. "Have dinner with me," he said impulsively. "I don't think that's wise." Please, just, please." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. They went to a small restaurant off the main street, sitting in a corner booth where they could talk without being overheard. Clara told him about her journey west, the difficulties of starting over, the freedom of being somewhere nobody knew her shame. "Do you regret it?" Cole asked. "What happened?" "No, never." Her fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not the arrest or the judgment or losing my position. It was that for a few days. I knew what it was like to be fully alive. Then I had to go back to being half dead. You could have had a normal life. That lawyer Mrs. Hutchins mentioned would have expected a proper wife. Submissive, docile, empty." Clara looked up at him. "You ruined me for that kind of life. Cole McRae, I'm sorry." "I'm not." They sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Clara stood. "I should go. My landlady expects me for supper." "Will I see you again?" She hesitated. "The teacher at the camp? Is she the marrying kind?" "I don't know." "Is John Carson?" "He could be, for the right woman." "Then perhaps you'll see her again. Perhaps she walks by the Mercantile every Saturday afternoon around 2. She pulled on her gloves. "Goodbye, Mr. Carson." Cole watched her leave, his food untouched. That night, he lay awake in the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling and making plans. Saturday came cold and clear. Cole was at the Mercantile at 1:30, pretending to examine harnesses. At 2:05, he began to worry she'd changed her mind. Then he saw her through the window, walking slowly, pausing to look in shop windows. He met her on the boardwalk. "Miss Bennett, Sarah Bennett." She smiled slightly. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Carson. Would you care for some coffee? It's cold today." "That would be lovely." They began carefully, formally. Coffee on Saturdays became walks along the creek when weather permitted. Cole told Muller he was courting a schoolteacher, and the old man grinned. "About time. Man needs more than horses for company." As winter deepened, their walks grew longer. They talked about everything except the past, building new memories to overlay the old. Clara, Sarah now, told him about her students, the miners' children hungry for learning. Cole shared stories from the ranch, the satisfaction of honest work. "I'm thinking of buying my own spread," he said one snowy afternoon. "Muller's offered to help me find one. Maybe go in as partners." "That sounds wonderful." "It's not much. Small place, needs work, but it's got potential. The best things usually do." They were walking along the frozen creek, snow crunching under their boots. Cole stopped, turning to face her. "Sarah, Clara, whoever you are today, I need to know something." "What? Is this real? Or are we just playing at being different people?" She was quiet for a moment, breath misting in the cold air. "Does it matter? If we're happy? It matters to me. Then it's real as anything can be for people like us." He kissed her then, their first kiss since that night in Kansas. It was different now, less desperate, more certain. When they parted, Clara's cheeks were flushed with more than cold. "Marry me," Cole said. "Cole, John Carson is asking Sarah Bennett to marry him. Legal and proper. Muller knows a judge who doesn't ask too many questions. And what happens when the past finds us? Because it will. It always does. Then we face it together, or run together, but together." Clara touched his face, fingers tracing the scar she knew so well. "You're sure?" "I've never been sure of anything except you." "Then yes, Sarah Bennett will marry John Carson." She smiled through tears, though she insists on a very small ceremony. They were married 3 weeks later in Muller's parlor, with the ranch hands as witnesses. Clara wore a simple blue dress and carried wildflowers Tommy had somehow found in the snow. Cole wore his best shirt and an expression of wonder, like he couldn't quite believe his luck. Muller, officiating with more enthusiasm than legal authority, kept it brief when he pronounced them husband and wife. Cole kissed his bride with a tenderness that made Tough Red wipe his eyes. That night, in the small cabin Cole had prepared on his new property, they lay together as husband and wife, outside. Snow fell softly, blanketing the world in pristine white. "No regrets?" Clara asked, tracing lazy patterns on his chest. "Only one." "What?" "That I can't give you the life you deserve. Big house, fancy clothes, respectability." "Cole!" She rose up on one elbow, looking down at him in the firelight. "I had a big house. I had respectability. They were prisons. This," she gestured around the simple cabin, "this is freedom." "You sure?" "I chose you in a barn when you were bleeding and desperate. I chose you when they arrested you. I choose you now. I'll keep choosing you until my last breath." Cole pulled her down for a kiss, pouring all his love and gratitude into it. When they parted, he tucked her against his side. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now? Now we build a life. We raise horses. Maybe I'll start a school for the local children. We'll plant that garden you mentioned." She yawned, settling deeper into his embrace. "We'll be John and Sarah Carson. And maybe that's who we were always meant to be." Cole listened to her breathing deepen into sleep. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering their tracks, offering a clean slate. He'd been Cole McRae, the outlaw, for so long he'd forgotten he could be anything else. But here, with Clara in his arms and honest work ahead, he thought maybe John Carson could be a man worth being. He'd stolen horses for a living, racing against time and fate, but Clara had taught him that some things were worth slowing down for, worth staying for, worth building instead of running. As sleep finally took him, Cole McRae's last thought was a prayer of gratitude, for second chances, for the courage of extraordinary women, and for the theft that mattered most, not of horses or time, but of two hearts that had found their way home to each other. Spring came late to the mountains, but when it arrived, it transformed everything. The snow melted into rushing streams, wildflowers pushed through the damp earth, and the Carson ranch came alive with new possibilities. Cole had 20 horses now, a mix of Mustangs he'd gentled and breeding stock Muller had helped him acquire. The cabin had grown too, with a proper bedroom added and glass windows that caught the morning light. Clara had started teaching again, gathering the scattered children from neighboring homesteads 3 days a week. Her schoolhouse was their main room, cleared of furniture, with rough benches Tommy had helped build. The children adored her, and their parents were grateful for education they couldn't provide themselves. It was a quiet life, but a good one. They'd been married 3 months when the past found them. Cole was in the corral, working with a particularly stubborn mare, when he saw the rider approaching. Something in the man's posture, the way he sat his horse, made Cole's instincts scream danger. He moved casually toward the fence where his rifle rested, but kept his movements easy, unconcerned. The rider was young, maybe 25, with the kind of careful grooming that spoke of town living. His horse was quality, his clothes new, but it was the badge pinned inside his coat, glimpsed when the wind caught the fabric, that confirmed Cole's fears. "Afternoon," the stranger called out, dismounting at the gate. "Fine-looking animals you got there." "Thanks." Cole continued working the mare, not approaching. "Something I can help you with?" "Looking for the Carson place, John Carson." "You found it." The man smiled, friendly enough, but his eyes were sharp. "Name's Daniel Harper. I'm new to the Territorial Marshal Service. Working out of Denver. Mind if I come in?" Cole's mind raced, but his voice stayed calm. "Gates open." Harper entered, making a show of admiring the horses, while Cole knew he was cataloging everything. Exits, weapons, details that might matter later. This was no social call. "You've built something nice here," Harper said. "How long you been in Colorado?" "Going on 6 months." "Where from originally?" "Here and there. Man moves around, following work." Sure. Harper leaned against the fence, casual as could be. "You know, funny thing. I was going through old wanted posters last week. Part of learning the job, you understand. And I saw this drawing. Man named Cole McRae, horse thief killer, escaped prisoner, dangerous fellow. Cole kept working the mare, though his hands wanted to shake. That's so? Thing is, the drawing looked familiar. Couldn't place it at first. Then I remembered meeting you at Muller's last month when I was buying a horse. Harper's smile sharpened. Remarkable resemblance. Lots of men look alike out here. Hard living does that. True, course. McRae had a scar. Left temple to jaw. Knife fight in Dodge, the report said. Cole turned to face him fully, letting Harper see the unmarked left side of his face. As you can see, Marshall, no scar here. Harper's eyes narrowed. He'd been so sure. My mistake, then. Sorry to trouble you. No trouble. But Harper wasn't done. Your wife around. Like to apologize to her, too, for the intrusion. She's in town, teaching. Pretty woman, your wife. Met her at the Mercantile once. Former school teacher from back east. Someone said, that's right. Funny thing about that, too. The report on McRae mentioned a woman, Clara Jameson, school teacher from Kansas who harbored him. Harper straightened. But I'm sure that's just coincidence. Cole set down the training rope. His decision made. What do you want? Harper? The truth would be nice. The truth is, John Carson runs an honest horse ranch with his wife Sarah. That's all anyone needs to know. Harper studied him for a long moment. You know what I think? I think Cole McRae is dead. Drowned in that river. Body never found. Tragic end to a violent life. Cole said nothing. Waiting. But John Carson, Harper continued. He's very much alive. Contributing to the community. Married to a fine woman who teaches local children. Be a shame if something happened to disturb that. Yes, Cole said quietly. It would. Course, a man in my position has expenses. Denver's expensive, and the Marshal Service doesn't pay much. There it was. Not justice, but greed. Cole almost felt relieved. Greed he could handle. How much? Say $50 a month. Small price for peace of mind. It was steep, but not impossible. Cole nodded slowly. First of each month? That'll do fine. Harper mounted his horse, touching his hat brim. Pleasure doing business with you. Mr. Carson, give my regards to your lovely wife. After he left, Cole stood in the corral for a long time, fists clenched, fighting the urge to saddle Blackjack and run. But running meant leaving Clara, leaving the life they'd built. He wouldn't do that, not again. When Clara came home that evening, full of stories about her students' progress, Cole told her everything. She listened in silence, her face growing pale. $50 a month, she said finally. We can manage that. For now, but men like Harper are never satisfied. He'll want more eventually. Then we'll deal with that when it comes. She moved to him, taking his hands. We knew this might happen. We could run, start over somewhere else. No, her voice was firm. I'm tired of running, and so are you. This is our home. We'll fight for it if we have to. Cole pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. I'm sorry. You deserve better than this. I have exactly what I deserve. A husband I love. A home we've built together. Work that matters. Harper can't take that away, but the shadow of blackmail hung over them now. Cole paid Harper faithfully each month, hating every dollar but knowing it bought them time. Time to establish themselves deeper in the community. Time to save money. Time to plan. Summer brought unexpected joy when Clara realized she was pregnant. They'd never discussed children, both assuming that chapter was closed. But as Clara's belly began to round, Cole found himself terrified and elated in equal measure. What kind of father can I be? He asked one night, his hand spread over the small mound. What do I know about raising a child? You know about horses. Clara pointed out. Patience, gentleness, consistency. Children aren't so different. Children ask questions about where their parents came from, who they were. Then we'll tell them the truth, that their father was a man who chose to change, and their mother was a woman who believed in second chances. The baby quickened then, a flutter against his palm, and Cole felt something crack open in his chest. Love, fierce and protective, for this tiny life they'd created. Harper continued his monthly visits. Always polite, always with that knowing smile. The amount stayed at 50. Small mercy. But Cole saw the calculation in the younger man's eyes. He was waiting for something, biding his time. It was Mueller who provided unexpected insight. The old German had noticed Cole's tension during Harper's visits and finally cornered him. "That Marshal, he troubles you." It wasn't a question. Cole considered his options, then told Mueller everything. The old man listened without judgment, smoking his pipe thoughtfully. "I knew you were running from something," Mueller said finally. "Good men don't work for room and board unless they have to, but you've proven yourself to me, John Carson or Cole McRae or whoever you are. I'm sorry for the deception." Mueller waved that away. "Harper, he's the problem. Men like that, they're parasites, but parasites can be removed. Not without bringing the law down on us. Maybe, maybe not." Mueller smiled grimly. "I've lived here 40 years. John, I know things about people. Leave Harper to me." Cole wanted to protest, but Mueller was already walking away, purpose in his stride. 2 weeks later, Harper didn't show for his collection. Cole waited, tense, but no riders came. Finally, he rode to town, needing to know. The news was all over the saloons. Marshal Harper had been arrested by federal authorities for embezzlement and corruption. Apparently, someone had sent detailed documentation of his various blackmail schemes to Denver, along with evidence of skimmed territorial funds. Cole found Mueller at the general store, buying tobacco. "Heard about Harper?" Cole said carefully. Terrible thing, but not surprising. Man like that, making enemies everywhere." Mueller's eyes twinkled. "Good riddance, I say. Mueller, you know, John, in this country, we protect our own. You're one of us now. You and that lovely wife and the little one coming." He clapped Cole on the shoulder. "Now, about those breeding mares we discussed." Cole walked home in a daze. The threat that had haunted them for months was gone, removed by the very community they'd feared would reject them. Clara cried when he told her, tears of relief and gratitude. That night, as they lay together, the baby active between them, Cole marveled at the strange turns life could take. "Do you think we're safe now?" "I don't know about safe." Clara said, "But we're home. That's what matters." Fall arrived with a bounty of golden aspens and crisp air. Clara was heavily pregnant now, moving carefully but still teaching when she could. Cole had hired 2 hands to help with the growing herd, young men who called him Mr. Carson with respect. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Clara's time came. Cole was in the far pasture when Tommy came racing up, face white with panic. "Mrs. Carson, sir, she says it's time." Cole had never ridden so fast, leaving Black Jack heaving in the yard as he burst into the cabin. Clara was in bed, Mrs. Mueller beside her. The older woman had come to help, bringing generations of midwife knowledge. "Out, Mrs. Mueller commanded. "This is women's work. Go boil water. Keep busy." But Clara caught his hand. "Stay. Please." So Cole stayed, holding her hand through the long hours, whispering encouragement when the pain grew bad. As dawn broke over the mountains, their daughter entered the world with a cry that sounded like triumph. "A girl, Mrs. Mueller announced, placing the tiny bundle in Clara's arms. "Perfect and healthy." Cole touched the baby's cheek with one trembling finger, overwhelmed by her impossibly small perfection. "She's beautiful, like her mother." "What shall we name her?" Clara asked, exhausted but radiant. Cole thought about names, about identity, about the power of choosing who you wanted to be. "Hope," he said finally. "Hope Carson." "Hope?" Clara repeated, smiling. "Yes, that's perfect." Later, as Clara dozed with the baby at her breast, Cole stepped onto the porch. The sun was rising over his land, his horses grazing peacefully, his family safe inside. He'd spent so many years taking horses' money, lives when necessary, But here, now, he'd learned to build instead. John Carson wasn't the name he'd been born with, but it was the name he'd chosen. The name he'd earned through sweat and sacrifice and the courage to change. Cole McRae the outlaw was dead, drowned in that river. In his place stood a husband, a father, a man with roots deep as the mountain stone. Muller appeared, carrying a bottle of schnapps and 2 glasses. "To celebrate," he said simply. They drank in companionable silence, watching the world wake up. "You know," Muller said finally, "Harper wasn't the first to recognize you won't be the last. This life, it requires vigilance." "I know. But it's worth it?" Cole thought of Clara's smile, of Tiny Hope's perfect fingers, of the home they'd built from nothing but determination and love. "Every minute," he said. Muller nodded, satisfied. "Then we stand together, you, me, this community. That's how we survive out here." As the old man walked away, Cole remained on the porch, planning the day's work. Fences to mend, horses to train, a life to build moment by moment. Inside, his daughter made small sounds, and Clara's voice rose in a soft lullaby. He'd stolen horses for a living, racing against time and fate, but time had brought him here, to this moment, to this life he'd never dared dream of, and for the first time in his life, Cole McRae, John Carson, wasn't running toward anything or away from anything. He was simply, blessedly, home. 5 years passed in what felt like a heartbeat. Hope grew from a squalling infant into a curious child with her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn streak. The Carson ranch had prospered, now running 50 head of horses and employing 4 full-time hands. Clara's school had moved to a proper building in town, funded by grateful parents and a mysterious donation from Muller. Cole had almost convinced himself the past was truly buried when the letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday, delivered by a nervous postal rider who seemed eager to leave. Cole's hands stilled as he recognized the handwriting. Marshal Frank Morrison, the man who'd arrested him in Kansas. "John, or should I say Cole, I know where you are and what you've built. I'm not writing as a lawman, but as a man facing his own mortality. Doctor says I've got maybe 6 months, cancer in my lungs, before I meet my maker. There are debts to settle and truths to tell. I'll be passing through Colorado next month. We need to talk. Morrison." Cole burned the letter, but the words were already branded in his mind. That night, he told Clara everything. "He could arrest you," she said, Hope sleeping between them. "He could, but dying men don't usually travel hundreds of miles for that." "Then what does he want?" "I don't know. That's what worries me." They had 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks of jumping at every rider, every unexpected sound. Cole increased security, kept his guns close, made quiet arrangements with Muller in case the worst happened. Morrison arrived on a gray morning, riding alone. Cole watched from the porch as the older man dismounted, noting how thin he'd become, how carefully he moved. This wasn't the robust lawman who'd tracked him across Kansas. "Cole," Morrison said simply. "Marshall. Or is it still Marshall?" "Just Frank now. Retired last year when the sickness got bad." He looked around the ranch, taking in the improvements. "You've done well for yourself. What do you want?" Morrison smiled wryly. "Direct as ever. May I sit?" The ride was longer than I remembered. They sat on the porch, 2 men with too much history between them. Up close, Cole could see death written in Morrison's hollow cheeks and labored breathing. "I've been thinking about justice," Morrison began. "Spent my whole life chasing it, believing in it, but now, facing the end, I wonder if I understood it at all." Cole said nothing, waiting. "You killed men, stole property. By any measure, you deserve that cell." Morrison paused, coughing into a handkerchief that came away spotted with blood. "But then there's Mrs. Jameson, Mrs. Carson now. I assume, what happened to her after you escaped? That wasn't justice. What happened? Town turned on her completely. Wouldn't sell her food, speak to her on the street. Someone poisoned her well, killed her animals. She held on for months, stubborn as hell, but finally had to leave. Morrison met Cole's eyes. That was on me. I could have spoken up, told them she was just a good woman who made a choice. But I was angry about your escape, so I let them punish her. Cole's hands clenched, but Clara appeared in the doorway before he could speak. She'd been listening, as he'd known she would. "Marshal Morrison," she said calmly, "would you care for some coffee?" Morrison struggled to his feet, removing his hat. "Mrs. Carson, you look well." "I am well, very well." She studied him with those direct eyes. "You're dying." "Yes, ma'am. And you've come seeking what? Forgiveness? Absolution?" "Understanding, maybe, or just to balance the scales a bit." Morrison reached into his coat, and Cole tensed. But he pulled out only a thick envelope. This might help. Clara took it, frowning as she examined the contents. Legal documents. Cole saw, official-looking. "What is this?" Full pardon, signed by the territorial governor." Morrison smiled at their shocked faces. "Turns out the governor owes me some favors. More importantly, turns out Cole McRae died in that river 5 years ago. All records show it, death certificate filed and everything." "How?" Cole managed. "Helps to have friends in high places. Helps more when those friends have their own secrets." Morrison sank back into his chair. "John Carson has no criminal record, never has, just a horse rancher with a wife and daughter, living quiet in Colorado." Clara's hands shook as she held the papers. "Why would you do this?" "Because I've arrested a lot of men in my time. Most were bad clear through, no redemption possible. But occasionally—" Morrison looked at Cole. "Occasionally, a man surprises you. The reports I've been getting for 5 years talk about John Carson's honesty, his hard work, his contributions to the community. Either you're the best con man I ever met, or you actually changed." "People don't change," Cole said automatically. "Don't they?" Morrison gestured toward the ranch. The life Cole had built. The Cole McRae I knew would have shot Harper, not paid him, would have run when threatened, not stood his ground, would never have risked everything for a woman's reputation. Hope chose that moment to come outside, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped when she saw the stranger, edging toward her father. "It's all right, sweetheart." Clara said, "This is an old friend." "Hello," Hope said shyly. Morrison's face softened. "Hello, little one. What's your name?" "Hope Carson." "That's a beautiful name." He looked at Cole. "Your daughter?" "Yes." "She has your eyes, but our mother's smile. I'd wager." Hope grew bolder, stepping closer. "Are you sick? You look sick." "Hope," Clara admonished. "It's all right." Morrison said, "Yes, I'm sick, but seeing your ranch has made me feel better. We have lots of horses. Want to see?" Morrison glanced at Cole, who nodded slowly. As Hope led the dying man toward the corrals, chattering about her favorite mare, Clara slipped her hand into Cole's. "It's real?" she whispered. "The pardon?" "Appears to be." "Then we're free, truly free." Cole pulled her close, still watching Morrison with their daughter. "Why do I feel like there's more?" He was right. Over lunch, Morrison revealed the rest. "There's a gang operating out of Wyoming, the McKenna brothers. They've been hitting banks, stagecoaches, leaving bodies behind. Territory wants them bad. Not my problem." Cole said, "No, it's not. But here's the thing. They're recruiting, looking for men with specific skills. Horse handling, especially—" Morrison pushed his plate away, appetite clearly gone. "A man with your reputation, your former reputation, might catch their interest. You want me to go undercover. I want the McKenna brothers stopped before they kill more innocent people. You want to ensure your family's safety permanently." Morrison shrugged. "Seems like our interests align. I won't leave my family. Wouldn't ask you to. But if they come recruiting, if you happen to hear things—" Morrison stood carefully. "Just think about it. The John Carson I've been hearing about, The one who helps his neighbors and teaches young men honest work. That man might want to stop killers from destroying other families. After Morrison left, promising to stay in touch for whatever time he had left, Cole and Clara sat together in the gathering dusk. "You're considering it," Clara said. "I'm remembering," Cole corrected. "The life I led, the men I rode with, the McKenna brothers sound like Big Tom Mallory's crew. Only worse. No code, no honor among thieves. Just violence for its own sake. You could help stop them, or I could get killed trying, or bring their violence here." He pulled her closer. "I won't risk you and Hope. Not for Morrison. Not for anyone. What if the risk comes anyway? Men like that, they don't respect boundaries. Better to stop them on our terms than wait for them to come." Before Cole could respond, one of the hands came running. "Mr. Carson, riders coming, 6 of them, armed." Cole's blood went cold. Had Morrison betrayed them after all? But as the riders came into view, he realized these weren't lawmen. Everything about them screamed outlaw, from their tied-down guns to their hard-worn clothes. "Get Hope inside," he told Clara quietly. "Load the rifle and watch from the window." She went without argument, gathering Hope despite the child's protests. Cole stood waiting as the riders approached, his hand casual near his gun. The leader was a big man, red-bearded, with eyes like chips of dirty ice. "You John Carson?" "I am. Heard you might be looking for work." "You heard wrong. I've got work." Redbeard looked around, taking in the ranch. "Nice spread. Shame if something happened to it." "That a threat?" "Just an observation. Lots of accidents can happen on a ranch. Fires, stampedes." He smiled, showing gold teeth. "Unless a man has protection. I protect my own." Sure. But sometimes that ain't enough. Now, my brothers and I, we're businessmen. We could ensure nothing unfortunate happens here. All we'd need is your particular skills with horses. Maybe a place to rest up occasionally." Cole understood now. They weren't recruiting him. They were extorting him. Use his ranch as a hideout, help with their crimes, or see everything destroyed. "And if I refuse?" "Well now, that'd be unfortunate." Redbeard's hand drifted to his gun. "Especially with such a pretty wife and sweet little girl." The threat against his family flipped a switch in Cole. The man he'd been for 5 years, peaceful, law-abiding John Carson, fell away like an old coat. What stood revealed was Cole McRae at his most dangerous. "Mr. Cole said, his voice gone soft and deadly. "I'm going to give you one chance to ride away. One, take it, and you might live to see sunset." Redbeard laughed. "You're 1 man against 6. You that stupid?" "No, I'm that good." Cole smiled, and something in it made the other riders shift nervously. "See, you made a mistake. You threatened my family. Men who do that don't usually get a second chance, but I'm feeling generous. So ride on. Don't come back. You know who we are. The McKenna brothers don't take no for an answer." "McKenna," Cole repeated. "Good to know who I'll be burying if you don't leave in the next 10 seconds. The moment stretched taut. Cole saw Redbeard's decision in his eyes, the slight shift of weight that preceded a draw. But Cole had been reading such signals since he was 14. His gun cleared leather before Redbeard's hand even touched his. The shot took the outlaw in the shoulder, spinning him half around. Before the others could react, Cole had fanned 3 more shots. One man's gun went flying. Another clutched a bleeding hand. A third's hat disappeared. "Next one's killing shots," Cole said conversationally, his smoking Colt steady. "Your choice." The McKennas looked at their leader, bleeding and cursing on the ground. Whatever they'd expected from a horse rancher, this wasn't it. "Get him up," Cole ordered, "and get out. Tell whoever sent you that John Carson's place is off limits. Anyone comes here looking for trouble will find more than they bargained for." They loaded Redbeard onto his horse, the wounded man gray-faced but conscious. As they prepared to ride out, he looked back at Cole. "This ain't over. It is if you're smart, but then smart men don't threaten children." Cole's voice carried clear. "Remember this feeling, McKenna. Remember what 1 man did to 6. Then imagine what I'd do if properly motivated. They rode away, leaving dust and blood in the yard. Cole stood watching until they disappeared, then turned to find his hands and Muller's men converging. All armed. "Sorry we're late, boss." Tommy said, "Saw them coming but couldn't get here faster. You came. That's what matters." Cole looked at each man. This might not be over. Anyone wants to draw their pay and leave. No hard feelings. Not one man moved. Muller himself stepped forward, ancient shotgun in hand. "I told you, John, we protect our own." He spat in the direction the outlaws had gone. "Besides, been too long since we had proper excitement around here." That night, after Hope was asleep and the guards were posted, Cole and Clara sat by their fire. The pardon papers lay on the table between them. Freedom and danger intertwined. "They'll be back," Clara said. "Probably, but not soon. Men like that are cowards at heart. They'll lick their wounds, maybe try easier targets. Or they'll come in force. Maybe." Cole took her hand. "I'm sorry. I thought we'd left this behind. We left nothing behind. We carried it with us, transformed it." She squeezed his fingers. "The man who faced those outlaws today, that wasn't just Cole McRae or John Carson. It was both. The skill of one, the purpose of the other. I could have killed them all, but you didn't. You gave them a chance to walk away. The old Cole wouldn't have done that. The old Cole didn't have anything to protect." Clara moved to sit in his lap, arms around his neck. "Then we'll protect it together. Morrison was right. We can't just wait for evil to come to us. Sometimes we have to stand against it." "You're saying I should help him?" "I'm saying you should be who you are. All of who you are. The reformed man who builds instead of destroys, and the dangerous man who'll do whatever it takes to protect what matters." Cole held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid weight of her in his arms. Through the window, he could see the stars wheeling overhead, the same stars he'd slept under as an outlaw, but now they shone on a different man, one with roots, responsibilities, reasons to fight beyond mere survival. "All right," he said finally. "I'll send word to Morrison, see what more he knows about the McKennas. And if they come back," Cole's arms tightened around her, "then they'll learn what I've learned. That a man with something to lose is the most dangerous man of all." Outside, one of the guards called the all clear. The ranch settled into sleep, peaceful under the mountain stars. But Cole sat awake, holding his wife, planning for war while praying for peace. He'd stolen horses for a living, raced against time and fate. Now he'd race against a different darkness, not to escape his past, but to protect his future. The man who'd once lived only for the next theft, the next town, the next escape, now lived for the small, warm weight of his daughter, the steady breathing of his wife, the dawn that would bring another day of honest work and earned peace. But if the McKenna brothers wanted to test that peace, they'd find Cole McRae waiting, not the reckless young outlaw he'd been, but something far more dangerous, a man with everything to lose and the skills to keep from losing it. The letter Cole sent to Morrison brought swift response. Within 2 weeks, a package arrived containing detailed intelligence on the McKenna brothers, 6 of them in total, each more violent than the last. Redbeard was Patrick, the second eldest, the leader. Seamus made his brother look tame. They've killed 17 people in 3 states. Clara read aloud after Hope had gone to bed, including a family in Nebraska, parents and 2 children. Cole's jaw tightened. Morrison knows what he's asking. These aren't just outlaws, they're mad dogs, which is why they need to be stopped. A month passed in tense quiet. Cole increased security, trained his men in defensive positions, and waited. Morrison wrote that federal marshals were mobilizing, but the McKennas had vanished after the confrontation at the ranch. Then came the news that changed everything. The McKennas had robbed a bank in Denver, killing 3 people including a pregnant woman. The territory exploded in outrage, the governor posting a reward of $5,000 per brother. Dead or alive, they're escalating. Cole told Clara, getting desperate and more dangerous. What he didn't expect was the visitor who arrived the next day, a young woman, heavily pregnant, driving a battered wagon. She stopped at the gate, clearly terrified but determined. "Please," she called out. "I need to speak to John Carson." Cole approached carefully, noting her red-rimmed eyes, the bruises on her wrists. "I'm Carson. My name is Mary McKenna, Patrick's wife." She began crying. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." Against his better judgment, Cole brought her inside. Clara took one look at the exhausted woman and went into caretaking mode, settling her with tea and blankets while Cole stood guard. Mary's story came out in pieces. Patrick had been the gentlest of the brothers until Seamus got his hooks in him. The bank robbery had been the final straw. She'd begged Patrick to leave with her, start fresh somewhere. He'd beaten her for the suggestion, but she'd heard them talking. They were coming back for Cole. When? Cole asked. Tomorrow night. Maybe the night after. They're gathering more men first. Mary clutched her teacup. Patrick said, he said they're going to burn everything. Make an example. How many? 20, maybe 25. Seamus has been recruiting from other gangs. She looked at Clara, tears fresh. I'm so sorry. I tried to stop them, but they're beyond stopping now. They're not men anymore. They're demons. Cole felt Clara's hand on his shoulder. We need to evacuate. Get everyone to safety. But even as she said it, Cole knew it wouldn't work. Running would only delay the inevitable. The McKennas would follow, destroy wherever they went. This had to end here. Tommy, he called. Ride to Muller's. Tell him it's time. Then go to town. Wire Morrison. Tell him the McKennas are coming here. What are you planning? Clara asked as Tommy rode off. What I should have done years ago. Stand and fight. He turned to Mary. Will you testify against them? Help the marshals? Yes, God help me. Yes, I want my child born into a world without them. The next 36 hours were a blur of preparation. Muller arrived with 15 men, all armed. All veterans of Indian wars or range disputes. Word spread through the valley. John Carson had stood for them. Now they'd stand for him. Cole was surprised when more arrived. The sheriff from town with 6 deputies, ranchers from neighboring spreads, even the minister, rifle in hand, declaring that sometimes shepherds had to fight wolves. 53 men, Muller counted with satisfaction. Good odds. It's not about odds, Cole said, checking rifle positions. It's about protecting what matters. Clara organized the women and children, setting up a field hospital in the main house's cellar. She worked with calm efficiency, but Cole saw the fear in her eyes when she looked at him. That night, their last before the storm, they held each other in the darkness. Promise me something, Clara whispered. Anything. If something happens to me, nothing will happen to you. Promise me. Her voice was fierce. You'll raise Hope to be strong. Tell her about both of us, the truth, all of it, how people can change, can choose to be better. Clara. And find someone else. Don't mourn forever. You've got too much love in you to waste it on grief. Cole pulled her closer, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. They made love with desperate tenderness, trying to say with touch what words couldn't convey. Dawn came too soon. The McKennas arrived at dusk, just as Mary had predicted. 27 men, armed and ready for slaughter. They stopped just outside rifle range, clearly not expecting the fortified positions, the dozens of defenders. Seamus McKenna rode forward under a white flag. He was older than Patrick, with dead eyes and scars that spoke of countless violences. Carson, he called. Send out my brother's woman and we'll make this quick. Cole stepped into view, rifle ready. She's under my protection, like everyone here. You shot my brother. Your brother threatened my daughter. He's lucky to be breathing. This can go easy or hard, Carson, but either way, you're dying tonight. Counteroffer. Cole called back. You and your men ride away now. Stay gone, and we'll call it square. Seamus laughed. An ugly sound. You think your farm boys scare me? I've burned whole towns. Carson, this will be just another. The shot came from the rocks above. Muller's man. As planned, it took Seamus's hat off. close enough to part his hair. That was a warning, Cole said calmly. Next one won't be. You're surrounded, outgunned, and unwelcome. Last chance to ride away. But the McKennas hadn't survived by backing down. Seamus raised his hand, and hell broke loose. The battle was fierce but brief. The McKennas charged, expecting to overwhelm farmers and shopkeepers. Instead, they met disciplined fire from covered positions. Cole watched it unfold from his post, part of him marveling at the transformation, from lone wolf outlaw to commander of citizen soldiers. Patrick McKenna tried to flank them, leading 5 men up the creek bed. Cole met them there with Tommy and 3 others. The fight was close and brutal. Cole felt the old familiar calm descend, time slowing, every movement precise. His rifle spoke 4 times. 4 men fell. Patrick faced him across 20 yards, both men's guns empty. The outlaw's face was twisted with rage and pain. "You ruined everything," Patrick screamed. "We had a good thing until you ruined yourself." Cole said quietly, "Made your choices." Patrick went for his pistol. Cole's hand moved like lightning. The way it had that first day, the shot was clean, final. Patrick McKenna fell beside the creek that watered Cole's land, his blood mixing with the clear water. The battle turned after that, seeing their leaders fall. The remaining outlaws broke and ran. Some made it to their horses. Others surrendered, throwing down weapons and begging for mercy. When the smoke cleared, 7 McKenna gang members lay dead, including 3 of the brothers. The rest were captured, bound for trial. On Cole's side, 2 men wounded, none killed. A miracle by any measure. Morrison arrived 3 days later with a full martial contingent, though there was little for them to do but take statements and prisoners. He found Cole on his porch, watching Hope play with the minister's children. "Hell of a thing," Morrison said, lowering himself carefully into a chair. His illness had progressed. He probably shouldn't have traveled at all. It needed doing. The woman, Mary, her testimony will hang the rest of them. You saved a lot of lives. Cole. John. Cole corrected gently. Cole McRae is dead. Remember? Morrison smiled. So he is. John Carson, on the other hand, seems to be quite the hero. The governor's talking about a commendation. Don't want it. Just want to raise my horses and my daughter in peace. I think you've earned that. Morrison was quiet for a moment. I won't be coming back this way. Wanted to say, I'm glad I was wrong about you. Some men do change, do better. You've proven that. They shook hands. 2 old adversaries who'd found unexpected understanding. Morrison left the next morning, and Cole heard 3 months later that he died peacefully in his sleep. The ranch returned to normal slowly. The bullet scars remained in the barn walls, reminders of the price of peace. Mary McKenna stayed until her son was born, then headed east with money Clara had quietly collected from the Valley women. The baby would have a chance at a different life, free from his father's shadow. 1 year later, on a perfect spring morning, Cole stood in his corral working a young colt. Hope sat on the fence, calling out encouragement. Clara emerged from the house, and Cole saw she carried an envelope. "Letter from the governor," she said, handing it over. Cole read it twice, then handed it back with a smile. "They want to make me a territorial marshal. Special appointment. Will you accept?" Cole looked around his ranch, his family, the life they'd built and fought for. "Not a chance. I've got everything I need right here." Clara kissed him. Hope cheered, and the colt danced in the morning sun. Cole McRae had stolen horses for a living, racing against time itself. But John Carson had learned that some races were worth losing, sometimes worth stealing just to hold them close a little longer. That night, as they sat together watching the stars, Hope asleep between them, Clara asked, "Any regrets?" "Just one." Cole said, "What?" "That it took me so long to stop running." He pulled his family closer. "But I guess every journey has its own time." "Yes," Clara agreed, her head on his shoulder. "And ours led us home. The mountains stood eternal around them, guardians of a peace hard-won and deeply treasured. Somewhere out there, other men ran from their past, chased by demons real and imagined. But here, now, John Carson sat with everything that mattered, grateful for the long, winding trail that had brought him to this moment. He'd been a thief, a killer, a man without hope or home. But love, impossible, transforming love, had rewritten his story. And as he held his wife and daughter under the vast Colorado sky, Cole knew that, of all the things he'd stolen in his wild years, time was the only theft that truly mattered. Time to change, time to love, time to become the man he was always meant to be. The stars wheeled on, indifferent to human struggles. But Cole watched them with perfect contentment. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Horses to train, a daughter to raise, a community to serve. But tonight, he was simply John Carson, husband and father, living proof that even the wildest hearts could find their way home. And that, perhaps, was the greatest theft of all, stealing back his own life from the darkness that had claimed it. One choice, one day, one love at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Cole and Clara's journey from that dusty barn in Kansas to their hard-won happiness in Colorado. Where are you listening to this story from? I'd love to know. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more tales of romance, redemption, and adventure in the American frontier. What did you think of Cole's transformation? Would you have made the same choices Clara did? Share your thoughts. I read every comment and love hearing your perspectives on these characters who've become so real to us all.